If you've ever wondered which deadlift variation is best for your training level, goals, and mobility, this is the video for you. Today we're breaking down a few different options for deadlift variations based on all of those things, and you'll get a few training tips along the way. If this is your first time here, my name's Justina. I'm a personal trainer based out of New York City who loves breaking down the basics so you understand how your body works a little bit better. If that sounds good to you, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button to stick around, but without further ado, we're gonna start with the beginners. There are a number of options for beginners here, but one of my favorites is starting with an RDL up against a bench. This variation will help you learn to shift your hips back without yielding too much at the knee. So if you lose contact with the bench, you know you've come a little too far forward. Now, another option is to start with a kettlebell on top of a block or a small step. This gives you a reference point of where the bell should land every time by keeping it close and directly underneath you rather than reaching forward. And then finally, we can take the RDL over to the Smith machine. I recently finally started using a Smith machine here and there, and you guys, this thing is great. Because the bar moves in a fixed position, it actually gives you a lot more stability and guidance on the path of the deadlift. So I think it's a great option for beginners. If you're limited through external hip rotation, the variation that will probably feel the best on you is a good old-fashioned conventional deadlift. With the narrower stance, this promotes more internal rotation at the hip. As we send the hips back, the femur or the thigh bone has to rotate inwards inside the pelvis. So if that's the position your body favors, we're gonna work with that. Now, there's absolutely benefit in spending some time on your mobility restrictions to give your body more options in terms of these compound lifts. So if you want some ways to improve your external hip rotation, stick around to the end of the video where I will guide you through a few options. On the flip side, if you're limited through internal hip rotation, you may prefer a sumo deadlift. I feel like this lift gets a lot of hate for not being like the most optimal variation, but honestly, I hate thinking of lifts that way because optimal for what? So when people say this isn't optimal, I want you to remember that the best or most optimal option is honestly, in my opinion, the one that feels the best to you. So if your mobility calls for a more externally rotated stance at the moment, I personally think it's a great option. Finally, if you're a little limited through hip flexion, you'll probably like a trap bar deadlift since it's a little bit more of an upright position. Now, restrictions through hip flexion are often tied to other restrictions, potentially internal rotation. It's me. So when we play with some corrective drills at the end of the video, you'll kind of see how everything we do supports each of these different restrictions. Now, if you're interested in growth, specifically the glutes, we've got a few solid options. A conventional deadlift is great, also an RDL, and even a deficit trap bar deadlift. When we flip the bar upside down or even stand on a plate, we're increasing the range of motion and stretch through the glutes at the bottom of the lift. But remember that bilateral hip patterns are only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to glute growth. You'll want a variety of movement patterns and stimuli, so if you want to know a little bit more about that specifically, you can watch this video right up here. All right, now for my individuals with limited equipment. We've got a few solid options to play with. We're gonna start with the most basic and work our way up. First is a rotational kickstand deadlift. The rotation over the standing legs ends up stretching the glute to get more bang for your buck, which requires a little less access to loading. If we wanna make this more challenging, we can actually prop the back leg up for a rear foot elevated variation. By taking out some of the stability, now we don't require as much load to increase the intensity. And then finally, we can move into a full single leg deadlift, which is the least stable and most challenging of these three options. In general, hinge patterns are a little hard to intensify compared to a squat simply because we're not moving through as large of a range of motion at the joints, but there are still some solid ways to go about it. So the format of this series is 6 different variations of our 90-90 position. The entire goal is to bring in different movement patterns at the hip from this specific base. So we're simply gonna start by setting up our base and holding that for 45 seconds. In this position, we want knee in line with ankle and hip, so 45-degree angles on each side. We're gonna take 45 seconds here, and then we're gonna take 15 seconds to get into the next part of this. So as we're in this position, I want you to try and square off your chest over that front leg. If you need a little bolster under this front knee to help give yourself a little bit more floor connection, totally fine. Block, pillow, rolled up towel, all of those things work great. So as we're here right off the bat, I just want you to kind of assess what's feeling more tight or uncomfortable, or insert any adjective, the back leg or the front leg. So that's gonna give you a little bit of an idea of maybe where you're compensating from, or maybe where you have a little bit more of a restriction. For me, it's my back leg, which is gonna be internal rotation. If you're feeling a little bit more compression in the front leg or just stiffness, that's gonna be your external rotation. So we're gonna stay in this through our rest. What we're gonna do from here is reach across the front leg, we push up, rotate over the back. We're gonna take 45 seconds right here in 3, in 2, and 1. So we reach over that front leg, we push ourselves up, rotate over the back. As we go through this, things should start to loosen up. And as we get into that rotation, we get a little bit more of a controlled position with these legs, meaning I want you to actively press the knees down. You're gonna start to feel all of those little stabilizing muscles through your hips start to wake up. So what we're trying to do here is simply mobilize the space we have access to and maybe gain a little bit more through these different positions. We've got 15 more seconds here. I always want you to hold throughout the break. It doesn't mean you need to push the knees down, doesn't mean you need to force anything down into the ground, but just holding that passive position. Finish out your last one. And we're gonna hold that passive position. Next variation, we're gonna create a lot of trunk tension. We're hinging over for 3, for 2, for 1, you're gonna use your arms to press you back up. If you don't need that help on the way down, I'm gonna challenge you to bring your hands to heart center. So let's do this all together. We hinge it forward for 3, for 2, for 1, push yourself back up. The goal here is to hinge from the hips. So if we start rounding from the spine, then we're really not getting into that hip anymore. What we're trying to do is use the glute to stabilize as your thigh bone is sitting back into your hip socket. Good. This one should definitely be a little more work than everything else we've done so far. We have 15 more seconds here. Finish out your last rep. Woo, all right, staying in the space. We're gonna bring whatever leg is front, that arm comes down so we're nice and supported. Back leg is gonna lift and lower. So we're feeling a lot of side glute right here, all right? Find this base, push the floor away. You can bring this front or this back hand on the front knee. We lift and lower. So as we're doing this, we're trying to keep everything else stable. A lot of times what I see to get more range of motion is we start like rolling through onto the floor. It doesn't need to be a lot. So we're using that glute med to lift up and lower with control. So think of this as an up for 2, down for 2, and we should have this flat line like I could rest a cup of coffee on your knee. If we start to rotate out or rotate in, then we're not necessarily working through the movement pattern we want. Again, we're gonna hit every single part of the hip complex, so make sure that we're getting hyper specific with what we're trying to target when. Good. Finish out your last one. All right, we're gonna stay in this position. Front leg, eyes on me. We're gonna lift the foot, extend and lower, lift, pull it in back to 90 and lower. You're gonna feel a lot of external rotation on that front hip. Here we go. So big inhale, lift the foot. We extend out as far as you can and lower. Again, drive the knee down, lift the foot, just back to 90 and lower. 45 seconds here. We have one more variation on this side before we simply go to the other. Whew. I feel like that all really went in a flash. You guys are doing great. Just about 10 seconds left. Finish out your last full cycle, and then we're gonna come all the way back up to our base. Whew, last thing, we're gonna do some IR lift off. So we bring hands forward. I'm gonna press this knee down, flat back. So again, we're not rounded over. From here, we're gonna lift and lower that back foot. Let's go for it all together. So take a big inhale. On your exhale, lift the back foot and lower. As I'm doing this, same thing. I'm trying to make sure that nothing else moves. I'm not doing anything funky with my torso. So we're really isolating this internal rotation at the hip. My front leg is also on fire. Good, this is our last variation before we go back and do it all on the other side. Time your breath with it. So it's an exhale lift, inhale to parachute down. If you need more of a challenge, you walk yourself up higher. Whoo, 10 seconds. After that last one, ooh, give it a little windshield wiper. Oh my goodness, great job. We're gonna go directly into the other side. So let's set up our 90-90. Same thing, 45 seconds in each drill. The first one, I guess technically we'll be here for a minute because I'm gonna let you hold this throughout the rest. But start to feel on this second side. How does this feel compared to the first side? Does one side feel a little bit more activated? Does one leg feel a little more crunchy? There's no right or wrong answer. I just want you guys to start to really get in tune with what the signals are that your body's telling you so you can put it in your toolbox and know where maybe your restrictions are. So you might have noticed in a handful of those drills that we just did, you might have gotten some cramping. Totally normal, okay? Cramping is totally fine. That typically means that we're in a range of motion we're not super strong in, so our body kind of jolts us, okay? The best thing to do in those situations is just ease on out of it. You get back in when you feel ready. Good, we're gonna continue to hold through this rest, but just as a reminder what we're going into, we're gonna reach over the front knee, we push up, find that rotation, all right? We're all in that in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So we reach across, rotate over. Got just about 10 seconds left. We're just gonna find that passive hold again before we go for those hinges forward. Finish out your last rep and we'll hang out here. So next exercise, as a reminder, either hands here or on the floor for more support. It's our slow hinge over. We use the hands to help bring us up, okay? Don't make it more work than it needs to be. So find that nice strong base of support. It's over for 3, for 2, for 1, we use the hands to come back up. Ideally, by the end of these reps, we're gaining a little more range of motion in that forward position without losing our base of support, okay? So we really want this proud open chest. We're hinging from the hip, not from the spine. Give me one more rep here. Whew, and give it a little shake. All right, I'm just gonna flip a little bit. We're going for that abduction. So we bring the front arm down, back arm is on that top knee, and we're gonna lift and lower, all right? We're all in it in 3, in 2, and 1. So proud open chest, nice and tall, lift and lower. You're about 20 seconds in. A few reminders here. We want this flat leg. We want to make sure we're rotating from the hip. Other things to remember here, it's not about the upper body. So as we lift up, we want to make sure we're not collapsing to get more range of motion. Really find that push away from the floor. You got less than 10, and we're going to stay in this position to work on that front leg. Good, and relax. So as a reminder for the front leg, we're gonna lift the foot, extend as far as we can, relax. We lift again, pull it just back in 90 and relax, all right? We're in it in 3, 2, and 1, let's go. So it's a lift. Extend as much as you can and relax. Again, we lift, pull it back into 90 and down. This one sneaks up on you for sure. It doesn't feel like a big range of motion because it's not. But the bigger the range of motion doesn't necessarily mean the bigger benefit. So a lot of what we're working in some of these is our end range control. That's typically where we're weakest. Very, very normal. If we're in a stretched position, we're gonna be weakest in that biggest stretch, but we wanna strengthen that so that we can either create more mobility, create more access to space, or simply make sure that when we hit those ranges of motion under force, we don't get injured. Good, finish out your last one. Whew, and we're gonna come up. All right, last thing, and then we're done. We square off, hands are gonna come in front of us. We're going for that internal rotation lift off, so back foot is gonna lift. We're all in it together in 3, in 2, and 1. Big inhale. Exhale, we lift, and lower. Big thing I want you to remember here is that it's a nice controlled descent as well. We don't just want that foot plopping down, okay? Control in, control out. Finish out one more rep and parachute it down. All right, hopefully those hips are feeling good. So again, the entire premise here is really making sure that we're mobilizing the hips in all different ways and directions to give ourselves more access to space. This is just one way that we can approach mobility. So if you've not seen the other video that pairs along with this one, I would definitely recommend so you can see a different approach to mobility and creating more space there. If you have any questions, as always, leave them below, and I will see you all in the next one.